Namaste. Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj. We are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1 Creation, Chapter 13, Text 55. Vijnanatmani samyoja Kshetragye pravailapyatam Brahmayatmanam adhare Gatambaram ivambare. Dhṛtarāṣṭra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence, and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the Supreme Brahman. Being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to raise to the spiritual sky. Purport. The living being, by his desiring to lord it over the material nature and declining to cooperate with the Supreme Lord, contacts the sum total of the material world, namely the Mahatattva. And from the Mahatattva, his false identity with the material world, intelligence, mind, and senses, is developed. Thus, this covers his pure spiritual identity. By the yogic process, when his pure identity is realized in self-realization, one has to revert to the original position by amalgamating the five gross elements and the subtle elements, mind and intelligence, into the Mahatattva again. Thus, getting freed from the clutches of the Mahatattva, he has to merge in the existence of the Supersoul. In other words, he has to realize that qualitatively he is non-different from the Supersoul, and thus he transcends the material sky by his pure identical intelligence, and thus becomes engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhṛtarāṣṭra by the grace of Vidura and the Lord. The Lord's mercy was bestowed upon him by his personal conduct with Vidura, and when he was actually practicing the instructions of Vidura, the Lord helped him to attain the highest perfectional stage. A pure devotee of the Lord does not have to live on any planet of the material sky, nor does he feel any contact with material elements. His so-called material body does not exist, being surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest, and thus he has permanently freed from all contaminations of the sum total of the Mahatattva. He is always in the spiritual sky, which he attains by being transcendental to the sevenfold material coverings, by the effect of his devotional service. The conditioned souls are within the coverings, whereas the liberated soul is far beyond the cover. Text 56. Tvasta maya gunodharka nirudha karanashaya nivartita kilahara aste stanur ivachala tasyantarayo mai bhabu sanyastakila karmana. He will have to suspend all the actions of the senses, even from the outside, and will have to be impervious to interactions of the senses, which are influenced by the modes of material nature. After renouncing all material duties, he must become immovably established beyond all sources of hindrances on the path. Purport. Dhṛtarāṣṭra had attained, by the yogic process, the stage of negation of all sorts of material reaction. The effects of the material modes of nature draw the victim to indefatigable desires of enjoying matter. But one can escape such false enjoyment by the yogic process. Every sense is always busy in searching for its food, and thus the conditioned soul is assaulted from all sides and has no chance to become steady in any pursuit. Maharaj Yudhisthira was advised by Narada not to disturb his uncle by attempting to bring him back home. He was now beyond the attraction of any material thing. The material modes of nature, the gunas, have their different modes of activities, but above the material modes of nature is a spiritual mode which is absolute. Nirguna means without reaction. The spiritual mode and its effect are identical. Therefore, the spiritual quality is distinguished from its material counterpart by the word nirguna. After complete suspension of the material modes of nature, one is admitted into the spiritual sphere, and action dictated by the spiritual modes is called devotional service or bhakti. Bhakti is therefore nirguna, attained by direct contact with the Absolute. Text 57. Sava adyatanad rajan parhata panchamehani kalevaram hasyati svam tachchabasmi bhavishyati. O king, he will quit his body, most probably on the 5th day from tomorrow, and his body will turn to ashes. Purport. Narada Muni's prophecy prohibited Yudhisthira Maharaj from going to the place where his uncle was staying, because even after quitting the body by his own mystic power, Dhṛtarāṣṭra would not be in need of any funeral ceremony. Narada Muni indicated that his body by itself would burn to ashes. The perfection of the yoga system is attained by such mystic power. The yogi is able to quit his body by his own choice of time, and can attain any planet he desires by turning the present body into ashes by self-made fire. Text 58. Dayamanegni birdehe patyu patni sahotaje bahistita patim sadvi tam agnim anu vikshati. While outside observing her husband, who will burn in the fire of mystic power along with his thatched cottage, his chaste wife will enter the fire with rapt attention. Purport. Gandhari was an ideal chaste lady, a life companion of her husband, and therefore when she saw her husband burning in the fire of mystic yoga, along with his cottage of leaves, she despaired. She left home after losing her 100 sons, and in the forest she saw that her most beloved husband was also burning. Now she actually felt alone, and therefore she entered the fire of her husband and followed her husband to death. This entering of a chaste lady into the fire of her dead husband is called the sati rite, and the action is considered to be the most perfect for a woman. In a later age, this sati rite became an obnoxious criminal affair because the ceremony was forced upon even an unwilling woman. In this fallen age, it is not possible for any lady to follow the sati rite as chastely as it was done by Gandhari and others in past ages. A chaste wife like Gandhari would feel the separation of her husband to be more burning than the actual fire. Such a lady can observe the sati rite voluntarily, and there is no criminal force by anyone. When the rite became a formality only and force was applied upon a lady to follow the principle, actually it became criminal, and therefore the ceremony was to be stopped by the state law. This prophecy of Narada Muni to Maharaj Yudhisthira forbade him to go to his widowed aunt. Text 59. Vidurastu tad ascharyam nishamya kuru nandana harsha shoka yutastasmad ganta tirtha niveshvaka. Vidura, being affected with delight and grief, will then leave that place of sacred pilgrimage. Purport. Vidura was astonished to see the marvelous departure of his brother Dhṛtarāṣṭra as a liberated yogi, for in his past life he was much attached to materialism. Of course, it was only due to Vidura that his brother attained the desired goal of life. Vidura was therefore glad to learn about it, but he was sorry that he could not make his brother turn into a pure devotee. This was not done by Vidura because Dhṛtarāṣṭra is being inimical to the Pandavas, who are all devotees of the Lord. An offense at the feet of a Vaishnava is more dangerous than an offense at the lotus feet of the Lord. Vidura was certainly very liberal to bestow mercy upon his brother Dhṛtarāṣṭra, whose past life was very materialistic. But ultimately the result of such mercy certainly depended on the will of the Supreme Lord in the present life. Therefore Dhṛtarāṣṭra attained liberation only, and after many such liberated states of life one can attain the stage of devotional service. Vidura was certainly very mortified by the death of his brother and sister-in-law, and the only remedy to mitigate such lamentation was to go out to pilgrimage. Thus Maharaj Yudhisthira had no chance to call back Vidura, his surviving uncle. Text 60. Iti uktva tarhuhat ityuktva taruhat svargam narhada sahatumburu Yudhisthiro vachastasya hridi krutva jahachchuchka. Having spoken thus, the great sage Narada, along with his Vina, ascended into outer space. Yudhisthira kept his instruction in his heart, and so was able to get rid of all the lamentations. Purport. Sri Naradaji is an eternal spaceman, having been endowed with a spiritual body by the grace of the Lord. He can travel in the outer spaces of both the material and spiritual worlds without restriction, and can approach any planet in unlimited space within no time. We have already discussed his previous life as the son of a maidservant. Because of his association with pure devotees, he was elevated to the position of an eternal spaceman, and thus had freedom of movement. One should therefore try to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and not make a futile effort to reach other planets by mechanical means. Maharaj Yudhisthira was a pious king, and therefore he could see Narada Muni occasionally. Anyone who desires to see Narada Muni must first be pious and follow the footsteps of Narada Muni. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 13th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Dhṛtarāṣṭra Quits Home. Text 14. The disappearance of Lord Krishna. Text 1. Sutta uvacha samprastite dvarakayam jisno bando didrikshaya gatum cha punya shlokasya krishnasya cha vicheshtitam. Sri Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna went to Dwarka to see Lord Sri Krishna and other friends, and also to learn from the Lord of his next activities. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descended to the earth for the protection of the faithful and annihilation of the impious. So after the battle of Kurukshetra and establishment of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the mission of the Lord was complete. The Pandavas, especially Sri Arjuna, were eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore Arjuna went to Dwarka to hear from the Lord of his next program of work. Text 2. Vyatita katichin mashas tadhanayat tatorjuna tadarsha gora rupani nimitani kurudvaha. A few months passed, and Arjuna did not return. Maharaj Yudhisthira then began to observe some inauspicious omens, which were fearful in themselves. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is ad infinitum, more powerful than the most powerful sun of our experience. Millions and billions of suns are created by him and annihilated by him within his one breathing period. In the material world, the sun is considered to be the source of all productivity and material energy, and only due to the sun can we have the necessities of life. Therefore, during the personal presence of the Lord on the earth, all paraphernalia for our peace and prosperity, especially religion and knowledge, were in full display because the Lord's presence, just as there is a full flood of light in the presence of the glowing sun. Maharaj Yudhisthira observed some discrepancies in his kingdom, and therefore he became very anxious about Arjuna, who was long absent. And there was also no news about Dwarka's well-being. He suspected the disappearance of Lord Krishna, otherwise there would have been no possibility of fearful omens. Thus ends our reading for today. Hopefully we will continue on Monday with text 3. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charya Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to our Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the worldwide devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nishingapali Dham Ki Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai. Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Pramanandi Hari 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 Bol. Dandavat Pranam.